after 8, the United Democratic Front was established 40 years ago. It was at the forefront of the fight against apartheid. Today, the remaining members are sounding a call to action to reclaim our democracy. In fact, dignitaries will lay wreaths for those who died in the fight for freedom. Ibrahim Rasool, Cameron Dugmore and Andre Bourain are expected to attend, but a notable absence will be cleric Alan Busak, who declined the invitation. Our reporter on the ground for us here on eNCA is Kevin Brandt, who's attending the event in Mitchell's Plain. Kevin, what's the latest? What do we know of Alan Busak's absenteeism? Why is he not there?
A very good morning to you, William. Well, UDF activists here in Mitchell's Plain are gathered at the Rockland Civic Centre. They are celebrating the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the United Democratic Front. Behind me you can see a crowd already gathered. The event is taking place under the UDF 40 theme, under the theme Building Active Citizenship for Accountability as well as Transformation, and the launch of the UDF in 1983. The officials here say will always hold a special place in their hearts, and also saying that it is a matter of historical record that UDF leaders from the province managed to convince the national leadership at the time that they could pull off this historic launch. And they are gathered here today to reflect on events that transpired back then, 4 decades ago, 20th of August in 1983. They came together here. My understanding is that there was a huge crowd present on the grounds where we are at the moment, speaking out against apartheid, also fighting for a non-sexist and a non-racial society. But here to talk to me more about that is Teresa Solomon. She is a former mayor of Cape Town. Ma'am, thank you so much for speaking to us. When you reflect at the time in 1983, what was it like living here in South Africa, and what was the mood like on the day when all those activists gathered here to form the UDF?
Yeah, let me start by saying that I was 37 years of age when the UDF was launched. And this is what we see here now is not what we saw on the 20th of August. This place was just crowded. You couldn't get people into the hall. And it was an amazing event, particularly for the people of Cape Town and for the political activists that worked very hard to ensure that we launched an organization that would encompass lots of other organizations. And we went in as CAHAC, Cape Areas Housing Action Committee, which represented the umbrella body for civic organizations in the Western Province.
Ma'am, when you look back now and where South Africa is 40 years later, and you look at society as it is today, what are some of the things that come to mind? Is it the South Africa that you back then fought for and would have wanted to see? In
some instances, yes. But it's unfortunate that we still have a serious challenge in terms of poverty. We have a challenge in terms of the youth. We need to ensure that we invest in our youth, because the youth are the tomorrow. And when we talk about the youth is the future, what are we doing now to ensure that our youth are citizens, responsible citizens for the tomorrow? So it's important for us to invest in the youth. It is also important for us to invest in the senior citizens, because these senior citizens have been involved in the development of our country, and therefore we must take note that we need to look after our senior citizens and to ensure that we are looking after the disadvantaged, the poor. People are poor, people are getting poorer, and that is a tragedy in our country.
Ma'am, just my last question. One of the key members, one of the founding members of the UDF not present here today, Alan Busak. What do you make of the letter that he wrote outlining why he will not be participating in the events of today?
I think it's also important for us to say that you should ask that question to Alan, And I also think that the right to speak, and Alan has that right, and if he wants to say, and we need to oppose what he says, then we also have the right to do that.
Thank you very much for your time, William. I also have Cameron Dugmore. He is an ANC MPL here in the Western Cape government. Mr. Dugmore, thank you for your time. Just reflecting on 1983, August 20th, what was it like here on the day for you, sir?
Well, I always have to tell people that in 83 I was 20 years old, and on that day I actually wasn't here. I got involved from 1984 when I was a member of the student organizations. We had AZASO, NUSAS and COSAS for the high schools. And then later on in the 80s, we got involved in the End Conscription campaign, a campaign against compulsory military conscription. So I hear the legends. In fact, what you referred to about the provincial leadership convincing the national leadership, the late Johnny Issel told me that story. Yesterday I spoke with Popo Molefe, and he was actually talking about how Johnny and others from the Western Cape, Cheryl Carolus, said, we can pull this off, we can do this. But so for me, it's, you know, I was also involved in towards the late 80s in the UDF interim committee in the Western Cape when a lot of our leaders were banned, were detained. And also we had a mandate to organize the Defiance campaign in 1989, which is also a massive mobilization of people, which I think tipped the scales towards the unbanning. But for me, it's been a totally defining period, the 1980s, and the UDF was central to that. And I just hope that in this reflection on the UDF, and as you mentioned, those key themes of sort of almost reigniting active citizens, making sure that leaders are accountable irrespective of whether you're ANC or any other party, communities insisting that their councillor does their work and they get involved, and then transformation. You've heard from what people have said here that we clearly haven't finished building that prosperous, united country. The land issue needs resolving, unemployment, the skewed nature of our economy, which is in the hands of a few. So there's a struggle ahead, and I think this is going to energize some of us who've got slightly older and grayer over the years. But the experience for me personally, working across communities, I grew up in George, coming here, Mitchell's Plain, Gugulethu to KTC, the time when the so-called Witduke were attacking our comrades, you know, and that's how I also got to learn about the ANC and was recruited into the ANC in 1987. But it was a molding experience for so many of us that it's part of us, and as you said, it's got a special place in the heart of people from this province and across the world. So it's amazing to be here with these veterans of our movement. Mildred Lucia, you know, one of 90 years old, a cadre from the women's movement, the civic movement, just a general all-rounder, to hear her speaking. So it's quite a joyful day. But I think the real lesson is we've got to take responsibility for our future, South Africans. We've got to get onto the ground, speak to our people much more, and hold all of our leaders accountable.
Thank you for your sentiments, sir. That was Cameron Dugmore. He's an ANC MPL here in the Western Cape government. He's part of the celebrations here at the Rockland Civic Centre in Mitchell's Plain, where the UDF activists are now coming together to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the UDF. Back to you.